The argument had been going for 12 minutes, and then, mid-sentence, she stopped. Not because she gave up, not to punish anyone. The words just stopped coming. Her nervous system made a decision her conscious mind hadn't caught up to yet. Her partner looked at her across the table, and in that silence, he decided she was stonewalling. If you've ever gone quiet in a conflict and been told you were stonewalling, that you were punishing someone, shutting them out, running from the problem, I want to say something before we go any further. That label is doing real damage to people who don't deserve it. Going silent in conflict is not automatically stonewalling, and the difference isn't semantic, it's neurological. Here's what Dr. John Gottman, the relationship researcher who spent decades studying conflict, actually found. Back in 2011, Gottman identified stonewalling as one of what he called the 4 horsemen, the 4 behaviors that reliably predict relationship breakdown. And he was right. Stonewalling is harmful. But Gottman also found something that never made it into the pop psychology version of his research. He separately documented physiological flooding, a state of autonomic hyperarousal during conflict, where heart rate crosses around 100 beats per minute and something specific happens. Most people who go quiet in conflict aren't stonewalling. Their body made the decision before they could. In the next 9 minutes, I'm going to show you 3 completely different types of silence in conflict, why they happen, what they mean, and which one you're actually operating in. Because most people watching this have been misidentified, and the misidentification is costing them their relationships. But first, why the most common explanation for going quiet in conflict is only partially right. Pop psychology has flattened all conflict silence into one category: stonewalling. You go quiet in a fight? Stonewalling. You need space? Stonewalling. The words stop coming? Stonewalling. There's even a script that's been spreading through couples therapy and relationship content for years. When you go silent, I feel abandoned. I need you to stay in the conversation. And that script isn't wrong, for one type of silence. But applied to all 3, it creates a problem. The reason this explanation is so sticky is that one of those types of silence is stonewalling. Gottman documented it. Punitive withdrawal, going quiet as a control mechanism to make the other person feel the weight of your disapproval, is genuinely harmful. Research backs that up. So the concern isn't unfounded. The category is just too broad. It's the equivalent of diagnosing every headache as a brain tumor, because brain tumors do cause headaches. But here's what Gottman's research actually documented, and what gets left out of the Instagram version. He separately described a second state. He called it physiological flooding. And at the threshold of flooding, when heart rate exceeds around 100 beats per minute during conflict, something specific happens. The circuits your brain uses for rational speech, empathetic listening, and measured response go offline. Not partially offline, not impaired, offline. Your body beat you to the decision. The silence isn't you choosing not to engage, it's your nervous system removing the option. So if flooding isn't stonewalling, what is it? And what's the third type that makes silence an actual strategic advantage? There are 3 types of silence in conflict. They look identical from the outside. They feel completely different from the inside. And they have completely different effects on the relationship, depending on which one is actually happening. Punishing silence, flooding silence, and regulating silence. Most people who are accused of the first type are actually experiencing the second, and a smaller group has, sometimes without knowing it, evolved into the third. Type 1 is punishing silence. This is what clinical research actually calls stonewalling, intentional withdrawal designed to cause distress. The silent person knows it's working. That's the point. The silence is the message. If you're watching this video, this probably isn't the type you're operating in, at least not most of the time. Punishing silence feels different from the inside. It has a quality of control to it. You can feel yourself choosing not to speak. Type 2 is flooding silence. You're in an argument. You know exactly what you want to say. You can almost feel the sentence forming, and then it doesn't come. The words dissolve somewhere between knowing and speaking. Your chest is tight. Your hands might be slightly unsteady. If you could just slow down the world for 30 seconds, you think you could explain yourself. You can't. The words are gone. And your partner, watching this happen, fills in the blank with the explanation that's available to them. You're stonewalling. You're not. You're in flooding silence. And what's happening in your nervous system at this moment has a name: physiological flooding, and a mechanism that neuroscience has documented in detail. A 2024 theoretical paper in Frontiers in Psychology, applying polyvagal theory to stress and emotion regulation, describes how the autonomic nervous system operates through a hierarchy of states. At baseline, what researchers call the ventral vagal state, your nervous system supports social engagement, empathetic listening, measured speech, rational thought. When conflict activates the sympathetic nervous system, that social engagement system goes offline. Not gradually, not partially. The biological infrastructure for communication becomes unavailable. While this paper was exploring polyvagal theory in clinical and therapeutic contexts, the nervous system state it describes, the shift out of social engagement under stress, is the same mechanism operating in any high-stakes conflict. This is not a choice. You're not being evasive. You're not punishing anyone. Your threat detection system assessed the conflict, determined that continued engagement was dangerous, and removed the option before your conscious mind could weigh in. So what separates someone who's flooded and someone who has actually mastered silence as a tool? Type 3 is regulating silence. There's a third group. They go quiet too. But what's happening inside is entirely different. They're not being overwhelmed by the nervous system. They're not running a punishment strategy. What happened, usually in under a second, is that they assessed the words forming in their mouth and made a calculation. Those words will cause more damage than the silence that replaces them. And what follows is deliberate. They create space, a few minutes, sometimes more, with a specific intention: to return once the nervous system has down-regulated. Not to avoid the conversation, to make a real conversation possible. This is regulating silence. It's not avoidance. It's not weakness. It's the most sophisticated emotional regulation strategy available in conflict, and most people doing it don't have a name for it. A 2026 study published in Biological Psychology, led by Dank and colleagues, investigated something that explains why this matters at a physiological level. They measured cardiac synchronization between romantic partners under stress, the physiological alignment between two nervous systems that makes genuine connection possible. What they found was striking. When one partner experiences acute stress, the heart rate synchronization between partners breaks down. The shared biological state that supports real communication, the nervous system alignment that makes listening and understanding available, decouples. And the decoupling doesn't stop when the stressor ends. It persists through the rest of the interaction. While this research focused on couples, the mechanism it describes is the same one operating in any high-stakes conflict. Productive communication isn't just psychologically difficult under stress, it's physiologically unavailable until both nervous systems return to a synchronized, co-regulated state. Regulating silence isn't shutting a conversation down. It's creating the physiological conditions under which a real conversation becomes possible again. The person going quiet isn't running. They're building the floor the conversation needs to happen on. Which type have you been operating in? And more importantly, which type has the person you're closest to been assuming you're in? Because here's what these three types are not: good, bad, and best. They're different nervous system events with different mechanisms. Type 1 requires honest self-reflection. Type 2 requires understanding of yourself and from your partner. Type 3 requires communication, which is what we're about to get to. Here's what most people miss about silence in conflict. The first person who needs to understand which type of silence is happening is usually not the person doing it. It's the person watching. When your partner watches you go quiet and reads it as punishment, they're interpreting your behavior through their own nervous system. If they're also flooded, and in a heated conflict they often are, they literally cannot tell the difference between a person choosing silence and a person who lost access to words. Their threat detection system fills that gap with the worst available explanation, which means knowing your type is only half the work. The other half is making your silence legible, giving the other person enough information that they don't have to interpret your absence alone. And that brings us to the question that actually matters. What do you say when you can't speak? Knowing your type changes one thing. It makes your silence legible to another person. Flooding silence with no communication looks identical to stonewalling to the person watching. Flooding silence with communication, even just, "I need a minute, my words aren't there right now," gives the other person something real to hold on to, instead of their worst interpretation of your absence. Going quiet in conflict is not a character flaw. It's a nervous system event. The person being called passive-aggressive for going quiet is often the person whose nervous system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The problem was never the silence. The problem was the silence without a script. Here's what communication looks like when your words stop working. Step 1. Name it before you lose it. At the first sign of flooding, heart rate rising, thoughts scattering, the sentence you need becoming hard to form, say something before the window closes. It doesn't have to be articulate. "I need a minute. My brain's going. Give me 20 minutes. I'm not leaving, I'm just gone." Anything that externalizes the state before you drop into it completely. The specific detail that matters. Give a time. Not, "I need space. I need 20 minutes." That number stops the other person from interpreting your silence as permanent. Step 2. The silence script. If you lose the words before you can name it in the moment, you can have this conversation beforehand, as a shared understanding between you and the person you conflict with most. The script is this: "I need, however many minutes you need, to regulate. I'm not shutting you out. I want to finish this conversation. I just can't do it while I'm flooded." Have this conversation during a neutral moment, not mid-conflict. The time to explain flooding silence is not when you're flooded. Step 3. The return. The distinction between flooding silence and regulating silence is what happens after the quiet. Both types go still. Only one comes back with intention. After your 20 minutes, return with one sentence: "I'm ready to continue." Not a full explanation, not an apology, just, "I came back." Set a literal timer when you leave the conversation. When it goes off, return, even if you don't feel completely ready. The act of returning is the message. One warning: the silent script only works if you actually come back. If "I need time to regulate" becomes a softer way of ending the conversation permanently, that is stonewalling. The type of silence isn't determined by what you say in the moment. It's determined by what you do next. The return is what makes the silence regulating instead of punishing. Without it, the script is just a more articulate version of the same thing you've been accused of. If someone in your life goes quiet and rarely returns, the distinction between needing time and avoiding resolution might be worth a gentle conversation. Not as accusation, but as information. When you don't come back, my nervous system can't tell the difference. You came in thinking silence and arguments was a liability. Let's talk about what it actually is. 3 types. Punishing silence. Intentional withdrawal designed to cause distress with awareness of the effect. Flooding silence. Your nervous system removes access to words before your mind can stop it. Regulating silence. Intentional, temporary, with the explicit commitment to return. The difference isn't visible from the outside. It lives in the mechanism, the intention, and the one thing that only one type always does: come back. You came in thinking going quiet in arguments was a flaw, passive-aggressive, avoidant, or at best, poorly managed. Now you know that for most people, it's the most honest thing their nervous system can do in that moment. That woman in the opening, the one who stopped mid-sentence. Her nervous system detected a threat level that made speech impossible. She wasn't stonewalling, she was flooded. And Gottman documented exactly why she couldn't continue, and exactly what the 20-minute return would make possible. That moment when the words stop, when your mouth closes, and the person across from you looks at you like you're choosing this. You're not choosing it. Your nervous system detected a threat level that made speech impossible and protected you from saying something you'd regret. The only thing your nervous system couldn't do was tell your partner what was happening. That part is yours. And now you have the words, for what the silence actually means, and for what comes next. Which type resonates with you? And if you've ever been called passive-aggressive for going quiet in a conflict, drop it in the comments. I want to know what actually happens in your body when the argument starts. This pattern, going quiet to protect your nervous system, doesn't just show up in conflict. It shows up in how you respond when someone tries to help you. If you've ever had, "I'm fine," come out of your mouth before you finish deciding whether you actually were, that automatic refusal is using the same protective mechanism. The nervous system that stops your words in an argument is the same one that refuses help before you've had a chance to consider whether you need it. Understanding where that comes from changes everything about how you relate to the people closest to you.